The top stories tonight in Y News. The Supreme Court began its much-awaited oral arguments for the 37 petitions challenging the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020.
A House committee passed a resolution that would amend the 1987 Constitution's economic provisions.
Transportation officials favors the deferment of the full implementation of the Child Safety in Motor Vehicles Act, also known as the Child Car Seat Law. The government signs term sheets with 5 pharmaceutical companies that will assure the country over 100 million vaccine dosages.
Winter storm blankets the northeast part of the United States, halting travel and vaccine appointments.
And Israel's mass vaccine rollout finally shows successful results. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Tuesday, February 2, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. A House panel approves a resolution that would amend the 1987 Constitution's economic provisions. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
With a vote of 62 affirmative, 3 negative, and 3 abstain, the House Committee on Constitutional Amendments approved the resolution of both houses number 2 filed by Speaker Alan Velasco way back in 2019.
To adopt resolution of both houses proposing amendments to certain economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, particularly Article 12, 14, and 16 as amended, is now approved.
RBH 2 proposes to add the phrase unless otherwise provided by law to constitutional provisions saying only Filipino citizens can control, own, and or lease alienable lands of public domain, natural resources, public utilities, educational institutions, mass media companies, and advertising companies in the Philippines. This will give lawmakers to pass laws that will encourage more foreign investors. Former Supreme Court Associate Justice Adolf Ascuna favors the proposed amendment but has recommendations to include.
You can impose reciprocity. You can say, unless otherwise provided by law, subject to reciprocity. Ilagay ninyo yon sa amendment ng Constitution so that hindi tayo dihado. Nabigay tayo ng bigay dito, pero yung mga Pilipino hindi pwedeng gumawa ng ginagawa nila dito sa atin sa kanilang bayan.
Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate is one of those who oppose the amendment.
Lumalabas na, Mr. Chair, na yung sinasabing flexibility is only a ruse, no? The real purpose is really ibigay tayo doon sa dayuhan.
Sana po hindi ganun ang ating pananaw kapag ang ating kagustuhan dito ay matulungan ang ekonomiya sa panahon ng pandemya at pagkatapos po nito, pagbangon ng Pilipinas to another level of economic prosperity.
The committee report will be submitted to the plenary for voting of all members of the House. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the number of jobless Filipinos in the labor force dropped in the last quarter of 2020. Based on the survey of social weather stations, adult joblessness fell to 27.3% of the labor force, or 12.7 million Filipinos. This was 12 points lower than the September 2020 result, with 39.5%, or 23.7 million. However, the average joblessness rate for 2020 was the highest, with 37.4%, beating the previous record of 28.8% in 2012. While in December 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, joblessness was at 17.5%. SWS says adults who are jobless consist of those who voluntarily left their old jobs, seeking jobs for the first time, or lost their jobs due to economic circumstances beyond their control. Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque says they welcome the development but noted that the joblessness rate is still higher compared to the pre-COVID-19 figures. The fourth quarter SWS survey was conducted from November 21 to 25, 2020 using face-to-face interviews of 1,500 adults nationwide.
Well, una-una, malungkot po tayo na hindi pa rin bumababa o hindi pa rin bumabalik sa dating datos ang ating joblessness bago po nasalanta tayo ng COVID-19. Ito po ang dahilan kung bakit kinakailangan magbukas pa rin tayo ng ating ekonomiya nang sa ganon mas marami sa ating mga kababayan ang makapagtrabaho.
After President Duterte lamented the country's sinking economy, a lawmaker has a warning to the next president of the Philippines. Meanwhile, another senator worries that the weakening economy, if not addressed, will bring more serious problems. Hardin Delgado will tell us why.
Apply now, suffer later. This was the fair warning of Senator Panfilo Lacson to the next president of the Philippines. In a tweet, the senator enumerated problems that the next president of the Philippines would have to deal with. Top of the list is the country's bad economy, the issue on the West Philippine Sea, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the country's outstanding debt amounting to 12 trillion pesos. In December, presidential daughter and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio topped the Pulse Asia survey of possible presidential candidates in the 2022 elections. In his public address last night, President Duterte lamented that the country is losing 2 billion pesos daily due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, Senate President Pro Tempore Ralph Recto estimates that the country had been losing 4 billion pesos daily last year. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon worries that if not addressed, the economic downturn will create more serious problems such as high crimes, extreme poverty, and joblessness. That is why the senator is calling on the government's economic managers to lay down a comprehensive and realistic plan to address the sinking economy. For his part, Senate President Vicente Soto III assures that the Senate will continue to pass measures that will help the country's economic recovery. According to Senator Christopher Bongo, the Congress and the finance managers are studying the possibility of pushing for the third Bayanihan law. In December, Senator Recto filed a 485 billion peso Bayanihan to Rebuild as One Act, which is still pending at the committee level. Earlier this month, President Duterte signed into law the proposed bills extending the validity of the available funds from Bayanihan 2 until June 30, 2021, and the 2020 national budget until the end of the year. Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Following several incidents involving policemen, as well as how some cases were handled, there are now proposals for various reforms in the Philippine National Police. Some of the changes being proposed is the separation of the Internal Affairs Service and the scene of the crime operations from the PNP. Leah Ilagan reports why.
National Police Commission Vice Chairman Attorney Vitaliano Aguirre wants the detachment of the Internal Affairs Service and scene of the crime operations, or SOCO, from the Philippine National Police. Aguirre says this is to free the two units from pressure from the PNP leadership during the conduct of an investigation.
Ang ating SOCO, sa Amerika yun ang Medical Examiner Office of the Medical Examiner, ay susceptible sa pressure, sa political pressure, and even the pressure from the higher-ups. Kaya ang kanya ay talagang dapat i-insulate yan sa pressure.
Aguirre said he will seek the guidance of the NAPOLCOM and Bank on the matter.
The office of the SOCO or medical examiner should be independent from the PNP but still attached to the NAPOLCOM.
In a text message, Attorney Alfigar Triambolo, Inspector General of the Internal Affairs Service, welcomes the proposal. Triambulo also explains that even though IAS is part of the PNP organization, IAS is not under by any PNP leaders. IAS is also headed by a civilian, so they can investigate any police officers involved in illegal activities and irregularities. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Department of Transportation and the Land Transportation Office has agreed to defer the full implementation of the Child Safety in Motor Vehicles Act. Under the new law, private vehicles are required to use car seats for children aged 12 years old and below. Joanano explains why.
In consideration to private car owners as the country still suffers from the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, the Department of Transportation along with the Land Transportation Office decided not to apprehend motorists who will violate the Republic Act 11229 or the Child Safety in Motor Vehicles Act. Today, the implementation of the new law becomes effective, wherein private car owners are obliged to use car seat for children 12 years old and below if they are aboard their vehicles. Despite of the law's execution, transportation authorities decided to postpone the full implementation of the law for 6 months, wherein violators will not be penalized yet. This as the government focuses first on the conduct of massive information campaign to let the public know of the implementation of this new law.
Ang ginagawa po natin ngayon, pinapalawak pa natin ang kaalaman ng madla at kung sakaling may makikita pong lumalabag dito, pinapaalalahanan lang yung mga concern na ito ay para rin sa kapakanan ng ating mga mahal sa buhay. Hindi po ang gagawin ng LTO ay mag-penalize agad o magbigay ng kaukulang sanksyon sa mga lumalabag.
Magiging focus ng Department of Transportation at ng Land Transportation Office ngayon ay yung pagkakaroon natin ng massive information, education, and communications campaign para mas lalong maintindihan, malaman ng tao kung ano yung kanilang kailangang gawin para makakomply dito sa batas na to.
Road safety experts emphasize the importance of the use of car seat among children as this will provide more protection in case of an accident. Based on a study conducted by the World Health Organization, it was found out that the use of car seat will reduce the possibility of death by 70% among infants, while 47 to 54% on children aged 1 to 4 years old.
The child seat is supposed to secure yung bata sa loob ng sasakyan. Yung severity of injury, yun ang isang tinitingnan natin dyan. There is a possibility na tumilapon sa labas ng sasakyan yung hindi nakasecure.
Child car seats cost from 2,000 pesos up to 30,000 pesos depending on the types and brands. With this, several people are against the implementation of this new law since a lot of us suffers from the impacts of pandemic. However, the DOTR emphasized that this law has been enacted and was approved by President Duterte prior to the pandemic, and it only happens that the law becomes effective a year after it was approved. The transportation officials explained that as of now, the law only covers private car owners as they are still conducting studies on how feasible this law should be implemented also among public utility vehicles. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Land Transportation Office or LTO Assistant Secretary Edgar Galvante clarified that the mandatory wearing of face masks among private car users only apply when there are 2 or more occupants inside the vehicle. In a virtual press briefing, Galvante cited an issuance from the government's pandemic task force that requires the use of face masks when there are at least 2 occupants inside private vehicles. Galvante added that drivers and passengers should wear face masks at all times while inside private vehicles, even if they are from the same household. The LTO chief emphasized that authorities will not immediately apprehend drivers who will fail to comply with the guideline. Instead, violators will be warned and duly informed regarding the new policy. The Interagency Task Force, or IATF, for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases will hold a discussion to clarify certain rules as to the wearing of face masks inside private vehicles.
The government expects to execute definitive agreements with pharmaceutical companies by February for supplies of COVID-19 vaccine doses. Meanwhile, vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. assures that the country's supply of AstraZeneca vaccines will not be affected by the politics in the United Kingdom. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Vaccine czar and COVID-19 Task Force Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez announced that the supply agreements with 5 vaccine manufacturers will be completed by the end of February. The country was able to secure 106 to 108 million doses of coronavirus vaccines after the signing of term sheets with the vaccine manufacturers. Meanwhile, last night, President Rodrigo Duterte said in his televised speech that the European Union is holding hostage the COVID-19 vaccines manufactured in their region. He also complained that less wealthy countries lack the capability to secure the supplies unlike rich countries.
For one, ang greatest disadvantage natin is hindi tayo mayaman. At ito labanan ito ngayon sa highest bidder nga. Kung sino yung bayad ng una, magdeposito na, tapos lalo na kung yung bansa na yon ang humihingi ng supply ng vaccine is the country where the factory is located. Tawagin natin factory. Nandyan, nauuna talaga sa kanila. Yung AstraZeneca, hinostage ng European Union.
But according to Secretary Galvez, the AstraZeneca vaccine supply for the Philippines will not be affected by the export control of the European Union.
Sa atin po, wala po siyang tinatawag nating komplikasyon kasi yung ating factory ay magagaling po sa Thailand. Hindi po tayo maapektuhan at saka meron po tayo maganda po ang ating relasyon po sa Serum Institute of India na meron din po siya na AstraZeneca na pinaproduce po doon.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. supports the procurement of excess COVID-19 vaccines in the country. Meanwhile, an online survey shows that 55.9% of over 15,600 Filipinos are willing to be inoculated against COVID-19. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
Finance Secretary Carlos Domingos said last night that they have decided to procure COVID-19 vaccines for 92 million Filipinos. This is 22 million more than the government's first target of 70 million Filipinos prioritized to be inoculated against COVID-19. Chief Implementer of the National Task Force Against COVID-19 Vaccine Czar, Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., supports Secretary Dominguez's decision. Galvez said this will augment the country's needs once there will be a shortfall on the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines in different parts of the world.
Nakita po natin talaga na kailangan damihan po natin yung ating angkat para pagka just nagkaroon ng slippage, tamang-tama po yung natin na hindi po tayo magkukulang ng bakuna sa ating 70% to 80% na populated. Kaya po, tama po yun, yung ginagawa po ni Secretary Dominguez. And we really want to commend him because talagang yung kanyang projection being a financial planner, ay nakita niya po na talaga yung mga possible variables.
Secretary Galvez adds the government should also consider the population that needs to be protected amid the threat of COVID-19 variants.
Nagbabago po yung datos ng ating herd immunity because of the new variant. Nakita natin ay tinaas po ng ibang mga expert na hindi lang 70% but 85%.
Secretary Galvez says they are expecting that all supply agreement with vaccine manufacturers will be completed this February. An estimate of 1.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines from the COVAX facility will be delivered in the country by the first quarter of the year. Secretary Galvez also said the government is also prepared and will still have enough healthcare workers when some of them will be deployed as vaccinators when the vaccination rollout of the local government units will start. Meanwhile, based on an online survey conducted by professors and students of the University of Santo Tomas, with 15,651 respondents, 55.9% of them are willing to be inoculated with COVID-19. 44.1% are unsure, probably not, and are not willing to be inoculated with COVID-19. Most of the respondents are more confident in COVID-19 vaccines made in USA and Europe, equivalent to 75.3%. Second in place are COVID-19 vaccines made in Russia, while 82.3% said that they are not confident in COVID-19 vaccines made in China. 92.7% of the respondents worry about the COVID-19 vaccine's side effects. 77.2% respondents also said they will only receive COVID-19 vaccines after many people have received the vaccine and if politicians will first be inoculated with it. The government and health authorities continues to persuade Filipinos to be inoculated as protection against the infectious disease. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The number of new coronavirus disease cases in the country has increased to 528,853 after the Department of Health reported 1,583 today. In its case bulletin issued on February 2, the DOH also reported 39 recoveries, bringing the total of COVID-19 recoveries to 487,611. The number of COVID-19 fatalities recorded in the country is at 10,874 with 67 new deaths. The DOH also reported that there remains 30,368 active COVID-19 cases in the country. The active cases account for 5.7% of the COVID-19 cases in the country. Of the active cases, 89% are mild cases, 5.3% are asymptomatic cases, 2.7% are critical cases, 2.5% are severe cases, and 0.54% are moderate cases. According to DOH, 13 labs were not able to submit their data to the COVID-19 data repository system on February 1, 2021. Malabon City Mayor Antolin Oreta volunteered to be the first person in the city to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. Based on the assessment of the Department of Health, the city is ready to roll out its vaccination program. Aiko Miguel reports.
The Malabon City allotted 50 million pesos for COVID-19 vaccines. This will be used for 180,000 residents of Malabon. Based on their vaccination plan, they set to immunize 1,100 individuals daily in 11 vaccination sites, mostly will be held in schools. Malabon Mayor Antolin Oreta allays fears of being inoculated against COVID-19. Mayor Oreta volunteers to receive the first shot to boost his constituents' vaccine confidence.
Kasi right now, when we did the survey, ang gusto lang pabakuna is only a little above 30%. So we still have to convince the masses na kailangan importante magpabakuna. Maybe set an example, papabakuna din tayo. I think that's one aspect of it.
Mayor Oreta also says he is open to his constituents' preference on what COVID-19 vaccine brand they would prefer, but will also depend what will be delivered to them. The Department of Health acknowledges the orderly vaccination plan of Malabon City. Based on the DOH's assessment, Malabon City is already prepared for the rollout by the coming months.
Nandyan na po ang lahat ng ingredients. Ang kulang na lang, yung bakuna. Dadating po yan ng February, in-announce na ni Secretary Galvez. Kaya lang, by batches ang dating. So, hopefully, March or April, maka-start na dito sa Malabon. Congratulations po. Very good po ang ating city of Malabon.
The LGU will prioritize to inoculate healthcare workers and the elderly population. The DOH explains it is unsure yet how many doses will be delivered and what COVID-19 vaccine brands will be given first to Malabon City. But the DOH assures those inoculated with first dose will surely receive the second dose and will be monitored of their condition.
Kung nagpabakuna sila ng first dose, sigurado nang may second dose naka-reserve. Kasi nakita nyo naman, hindi sigurado yung supply. So pag nabigyan ka ng first dose, may sigurado ka ng second dose.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The Supreme Court began hearing today the oral arguments on petitions against the Anti-terrorism Act. There were at least 37 petitions filed before the High Court, with several motions asking that the enforcement of the law be halted as some of its provisions may lead to human rights violations. Dante Amento tells us why, live. Dante, go ahead.
Diego, lawyers of the petitioners against the anti-terrorism law argued during the oral arguments on the petitions against the law this afternoon. They stressed that the law should be junk for being unconstitutional and subject to abuse by the law enforcers. The petitioners said that the law violated more human rights than giving security to the people. Human rights lawyer Chel Jokno said these include the vague or unclear definition of terrorism under Section 4 of the law that can also affect the other provisions such as inciting to commit terrorism or conspiracy to commit terrorism.
One who exercises basic rights may still be liable for terrorism if he or she is impelled by the requisite intent and purpose. No other law makes the exercise of constitutional rights a crime when actuated by a certain intent.
Albay Representative Edsel Lagman, on the other hand, worries that the detention that can be extended up to 24 days, even without formal charges filed in court, will result to torture, particularly by the law enforcers. Former Bayan Muna Party List Representative Attorney Nericol Minares said the Anti-Terror Act has its wide scope that may even overlap the justice and courts functions. Attorney Algamar Latif mentioned the discrimination against the Muslims and natives. Meanwhile, before the oral arguments, anti and pro-anti-terrorism law groups held program outside the Supreme Court. The supporters of the law stressed that the law will protect their children against the recruitment, particularly by the new People's Army.
May pakita sa buong sambayanan na ang mga magulang ay nagkakaisa na konti lang po kami. Pero kung pagmamasdan nyo sa social media at sa lahat ng mga lumalabas na talagang ayaw na nila nitong karahasan na ginagawa ng CPP, NPA, NDF sa ating bayan.
On the contrary, just like the petitioners, those against the law also hope that in due time the Supreme Court will hear their plea to totally scrap the law. Associate Justice Marvic Leonen, the last to interpolate, gave the fact that it may be too early for the Supreme Court to intervene given that petitioners have not suffered a direct injury yet. Diego, only 3 justices were able to interpolate during the oral arguments this afternoon, and it will be continued next Tuesday next week. And that's the latest live. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you, Dante Amento, reporting live. President Rodrigo Duterte wants Baguio City Mayor Benji Magalong to stay in his concurrent post as the country's contact tracing czar. In a virtual presser, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Duterte is all praises for Magalong's competence to lead the contact tracing efforts nationwide. National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez, who joined Roque in the virtual press conference, said Magalong is irreplaceable. He said the task force would talk and can convince Magalong to stay in his post.
I have heard with my own 2 ears nothing but words of praises for Mayor Magalong from the President. So of course, I am sure, 100% sure that the President would want Mayor Magalong to stay on as tracing czar.
Meanwhile, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. has called out presidential spokesperson Harry Roque over his comments on foreign affairs issues, saying that the latter was not competent on matters involving foreign relations. Locsin wrote on Twitter that Roque should just lay off foreign affairs. The country's top diplomat tweeted this after Roque disputed claims that China's Coast Guard law, which allows its forces to attack foreign vessels, has killed hopes to have a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. Roque, meanwhile, defended his remarks on foreign affairs issues, saying it would be hard to stay mum when he speaks for the president, whom he described as the chief architect of foreign policy. But the palace official apologized and clarified that he was not interfering with the Foreign Affairs Department.
I love him back. Even more so. Tisoy kasi, no? Pero anyway, ang sa akin naman po ay the President is a chief architect of foreign policy, pero hindi po tayo naghihimasok.
And for the news abroad, here's Stephanie C. reporting live from Hong Kong.
Good evening, William. A massive winter storm is working its way along the East Coast, shutting down schools, vaccination sites, and travel as it threatens to dump up to 2 feet of snow in parts of the region. Miguel Rey de Leon reports.
A winter storm has hit the eastern states of the U.S. on Monday, bringing strong winds, heavy snowfall, and coastal flooding in the area. National Weather Service reports that more than 13 inches of snow had fallen in Manhattan, New York, and as much as 16 inches in northern New Jersey. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has declared a state of emergency for some regions in New York because of the storm that will pursue for 2 long days.
I've declared a state of emergency for 44 counties in New York State, basically all the counties outside of western New York. State of emergency has a number of consequences, but from a citizen point of view, if you are not an essential worker, you should not be on the roads when there's a state of emergency.
At least 3 deaths related to the storm have been reported in Pennsylvania, while 4 firefighters in Virginia were taken to hospitals with injuries due to a fire truck overturned Sunday on snow-covered roads in Henrico County. In Connecticut, Governor Ned Lamont on Twitter has said that the winter storm caused cancellation of COVID-19 vaccine appointments scheduled for Monday and Tuesday, instructing vaccine providers to contact all individuals to reschedule. Before hitting the eastern parts of the United States, the storm has blanketed parts of Midwest, with some getting the most snow in several years. Meanwhile, a visit of U.S. President Joe Biden to the State Department that was initially planned for Monday has been postponed due to the snow and cold in Washington. Miguel Rey de Leon, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
China arrests more than 80 people involved in producing more than 3,000 fake COVID-19 vaccine doses. Marvy Delphine will give us the details live. Marvy?
Steph, Chinese authorities have detained more than 80 people suspected of manufacturing counterfeit coronavirus vaccines, a state news agency reported. The fake vaccines were made by injecting saline solution into syringes. It has not been made public how many vaccines were sold, but a total of 3,000 vaccine doses were confiscated, with police raids taking place in several locations across the country, particularly in Jiangsu, Beijing, and the eastern province of Shandong. They are alleged to have been carrying out the ruse since at least September last year and may have intended to send the vaccines abroad and sell at high markup prices. Under a new vaccine law that came into force in 2019, those making and selling fake vaccines can be fined between 15 and 50 times the value of the product, while those making or selling substandard products face fines of 10 to 30 times the value. The crackdown on fake vaccine rings began with an order from the Ministry of Public Security as China is ramping up its vaccine production capacity. The Ministry of Public Security has been reminding the public to go through an official channel to get the vaccine, to ensure it is legitimate, and to not post photos of their vaccine cards or certificates online. China has been vaccinating its population with shots from two companies, Sinovac and Sinopharm, and both have also been rolled out in other countries. Authorities said that 24 million doses have been administered so far, and the goal is to immunize 50 million people before the Lunar New Year holiday later this month. Provincial officials are also mobilizing grassroots networks to carry out mass inoculations. Steph?
All right, Marvy, thank you for that live report. Malaysia is expected to receive the first batch of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccines on February 26. Sierra Yambao reports.
Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Sham Abdullah has announced that the first batch of the Pfizer BioNTech coronavirus vaccine is expected to arrive on February 26. Once it's received, it will be distributed in stages to all states within a week or two. Previously, Malaysia has purchased 12.8 million doses of the vaccine and an additional 12.2 million doses from Pfizer. Under the deal, Pfizer will deliver the first 1 million doses in the first quarter of 2021. The other vaccine for COVID-19, developed and sponsored by China's Institute of Medical Biology Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, are in Phase 3 clinical trials with 141 selected volunteers who received the injections, according to Dr. Nuri Sham. Meanwhile, the sharp increase in the number of recent cases reaching 5,000 is due to the late report received by the National Crisis Preparedness and Emergency Response Center, and in several states, the result of targeted workplace screening, close contact, and high-risk group screening conducted on a large scale, he added. Sherry Yambao, UNTV News and Rescue, Malaysia. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Israel's vaccination program against COVID-19 has proved lowered infection rates and improved symptoms. Early Briones will tell us why.
Israel's vaccine drive against COVID-19 has now shown promising results in both lowering infection rates and symptoms development. The highest fallout rates are seen in individuals who are 60 years and older and those who have received the full dose. The Israeli Ministry of Health published figures of more than 530 elderly individuals over 60 have tested positive for coronavirus out of the total 750,000 fully vaccinated. Within those, only 38 were hospitalized with moderate to critical disease. Separately, Maccabi Healthcare Service, Israel's second-largest healthcare provider, published a figure of 248,000 fully vaccinated individuals. 66 of those individuals still contracted the virus, but displayed only mild symptoms and did not require any hospitalization or urgent care. Dr. Anat Eka Zohar told Times of Israel that through the vaccine, the virus produces a very light illness with only mild symptoms of headaches and almost zero fevers. The Maccabi Health Services has estimated and confirmed the 92% efficacy of the Pfizer vaccine as used in the population, unlike unvaccinated individuals that are likely to contract the virus 11 times more. This, authorities comment, is not just the result of lockdown and restrictions, but of the vaccine itself, as these big changes were not seen during the earlier lockdowns. Israel has now delivered the Pfizer vaccine to a population of 9 million, but only 1 million have received the full dose of the vaccine. While many remained unvaccinated, those vaccinated are still required to observe social distancing and protective equipment. Early Briones, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news in the other parts of the globe. For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Stephanie C., live from Hong Kong.
A woman went viral on social media recently after one of her aerobics videos showed military presence on the background the same day as the military takeover in Myanmar. King Nin Y is a physical education teacher and has regularly been shooting videos of her doing aerobics. In one of her videos, it showed military vehicles passing on her background. The video was shot on Monday when the country's military staged a coup and has detained several members of the National League for Democracy party. On her Facebook page, she clarified this has been her daily routine after her video went viral. And those are the reasons behind the news, February 2, 2021. I am Jorlene Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. Emangelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.